AI does have a tremendous impact on the way that we work. And still, we're very new. I mean, ABM's been around for 12 years and people are just starting to figure out how to tap into these superpowers. So I think there's going to be a long tailwind to adoption. It's hard to get people to do things that are different. So right now, the market's basically zero, but it's going to grow. And there's a ton of competition of who's going to run Google ads for a company. That's a product that everyone has learned and done. And since I was like 19, I could run ads. But this has not many, if any, people in the market for AI enablement and things. So I think what he's addressing is there's a huge opportunity to create services that are adjacent to what you've been comfortable with, and there's going to be a market for it.
You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. We're your hosts, Brendon Dennewill, CEO and co-founder of Dynamico,
and Amy Weaver, Dynamico's marketing director.
So it was cool to see you a couple of weeks ago in Boston. It's always good to catch up in person, right?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you've always been a role model figure. You're doing great stuff, and the way you approach conversations is wonderful.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. I have a lot of respect for you. And of course, we're very excited about meeting up in your backyard next year in San Francisco. That's going to be really cool, right?
The announcement for Inbound coming to San Francisco was a pretty exciting turn of events when she popped on stage and was like, hey, Inbound's going on the road. I turned to Will and I was like, if it's Orlando or San Francisco, I am going to be thrilled.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we have offices in both. So yeah, it's exciting. I can imagine the headache of the Inbound team, though, having a bit of a system worked out and then shipping it across the country. And San Francisco is, from permitting to all sorts of things, is a different city than Boston.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
But it's going to be wonderful. It's a city I love. And there's so many cool things about it.
You know, everybody loved the annual pilgrimage to Boston. And we'll get to do that again in 2026 by the sounds of it. But I think it also makes sense. I mean, we had a lot of people asking us, where is it going to be next year? And it's like, oh, no, it's in Boston every year. And it's like, and then, of course, you know, Yamini came out and said, no, well, next year is in San Fran. So that's kind of cool.
It's super cool. Again, like, I love the city. If you guys need any help figuring out what to do or where to stay, we're going to help out whoever we can. I am giving myself the title of San Francisco ambassador for
That's cool.
HubSpotters.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if we're going to be taking you up on that.
Please. Yeah, that'd be great. It's going to be a blast. San Francisco is great. And it's a challenging city for many reasons. It's only 7 miles by 7 miles. There's over 1 million people in that space. And when you do the numbers, you can create some of the problems that can get highlighted in certain like media outlets. And they've had their problems, all things do. But I think they've done an excellent job and continue to iterate to make it a better and safer and thriving place. All right, that's enough. I'm not getting paid by San Francisco to be so pro city.
Well, yeah, but we're all proud of the cities that we're closest to, right?
That's true.
Chris, what are you most excited about here for Q4 and heading into 2025?
I mean, personally, I'm getting married at the end of the month, so that's exciting.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
So yeah, no, I have a personal thing that I'm excited about. Q4 is my favorite quarter of the year, and now I have an extra reason. So that's a personal thing, company-wide. And, you know, we're in similar companies. For us, there's always been a struggle, even with the most senior team members, to manage projects and time. And so we've invested a lot of time and money and energy into really leveraging Asana and usage, and the team finally cracked the code, and there's like a confidence and like a morale boost that came with that. As oddly as that sounds, I'm excited for that to continue to grow for the rest of the quarter. It's so important for legal reasons, for client expectation reasons, but it's a struggle across the board. So that's a personal, that's a company. And then just, I think for the industry, I'm kind of excited because the buzz of AI is obviously great for LinkedIn gurus, and it's a fun hype, and I'm a marketer, so I get it. But there's also seemed to be like a reverberating message about the importance of drilling into the basics, which is just not a message that I hear often enough. And you're a rugby guy, right? So when I would train and you get your butt kicked, the next thing you do is fitness and then work on the basics. Because if you have the basics down, you can do more advanced movements. So that messaging of sticking to the fundamentals and nailing those first, and then using software and all these other tools to advance it, I'm happy to hear that message is shining again. It's really important.
Yeah, it's funny because, I mean, a lot of the things you just mentioned are very common themes on this show, and they weren't themes when we started this season 2 of RevOps Champions, which is maybe like 6 months ago now, we had no idea, of course, what the themes would be, which is one of the fun things about doing a podcast, right? And one of them has definitely been from the very beginning is the advice from a lot of experienced leaders that we've had on the show has been make sure you get all your processes figured out manually before you start trying to figure out where you use automation or technology to make it better and faster, which of course makes sense because in the work that you and I do every day, that our teams do with implementing technology, you see the mistakes being made by other companies all the time where they're buying the technology first, thinking that it's going to fix their processes, but of course that doesn't happen.
I'm guilty of that habit too. When younger in my career, I mean, instinctually, when there's a problem, we as humans want an easy solve. So we can, and it sounds by your reaction, you can empathize with that response as well.
Absolutely.
There's also an interesting kind of the backside of the mirror, I think, with this conversation, and that is how companies choose to tackle these problems and be honest with themselves is also like a very clear reflection of the company culture around problem solving and how they choose to tackle that or not. Really interesting. And I've also found this year, there seems to be a weaving, and maybe I'm just getting older and weirder, but it seems like I'm getting brought into meetings with my clients. I don't do any servicing, but I do strategic and almost like counseling. It feels like this company culture thing comes up so often. Like, how do we get our teams to change? It's like, you've been doing this for 25 years. How are we having this conversation now? So maybe part of the fundamentals that can come up is leadership and management, and then human stuff. How interesting with all this AI buzz. The fundamentals and the humanness is just emerging again.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned that because, and of course, not at all surprising, but when we started doing bigger projects, larger implementations and whatever, and people started mentioning change management as part of that in the beginning, we were like, change management, that's for big companies. And we're like, oh, actually, well, if we're doing, if we're implementing a CRM or a marketing platform or whatever for 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 people, that is big. So, oh yeah, change management is actually a really important part of that. But then the other thing that I've learned the hard way about change management and things that you were talking about now, the hard way was that it's kind of like implementing a CRM or any technology, right? You're never done, because as long as the technology is evolving and as long as you're adding headcount to your team and you're growing and you're collecting more data every day, the change has to continue, right? So how do you continue to?
That's right. And companies like ours, we add a layer of glue and security. I've used the word legal again, but there's also like a bit of a legal shield when you can partner with a firm like yours or growth. It adds a lot of value. And I think we as business owners in this consulting space and execution space are learning the right words and the right positioning to really share the value that we provide that maybe was less obvious upon, hey, Dynamica or Growth onboarded us to our HubSpot instance. It seems like we're just a bullet service. So be able to speak into that, and now to have the depth of roster and time to showcase that value, I think has been really important.
Yeah. But I think you're right, though, because the foundation and the fundamentals that you have to keep in place to be able to keep changing, I think you were spot on when you said it's all about the culture. That has to be part of your culture, that yes, in the space, in the work that we do, we are leading the change, which means we have to be excited about it and we have to be open to change, of course, ourselves, and then help our clients navigate that change. And yeah, there's a lot of culture and mindset stuff going on there.
I mean, to share, a lot of people talk about all the good stuff, but, I earlier shared that, our company has finally checked the magic box with Asana. When it comes to leadership and accountability and being part of the change, one of the missing pieces was I kind of always rebuffed it. And I'm like, hey, I'm too busy. I'm insert classic founder-led organization, BS reason here. I made the change. And because growth has always been led by my type of energy, I don't think it was directly correlated, but it certainly helped with the momentum of things falling into place. And so I had to kind of swallow that reality pill that I realistically should expect everyone's best to be my worst, is how I've always operated as a leader. And so what a blinding, obvious kick in the head that was when we're on the other side of it now. But it's a reminder. All leaders have a lot of growth to do, and it's important.
Yeah. And I think it never ends. I know you read Brian Halligan's, he's actually written some really good stuff in the last couple of weeks. But the one where he talks about going from a $0 startup to a $25 billion company, that's billion with a B. He talks about the fact that you're the age and stage of the business, right? And so businesses of our size, when we get to 100 or 150 or 200 people, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have problems anymore or challenges. We're going to have different types of challenges.
At least 150 to 200 of them.
Yes, exactly. So you can imagine having 8,000 or 10,000 anyway. So, but the point is that your leadership has to continuously evolve. And that's made easy, of course, by having a consistent culture and mindset, because not everybody's the right fit for every company. So,
and it kind of goes into just honesty and transparency, accountability, empathy. All of these human traits are colors that make up the painting of leadership and company culture. And those, it's not just a slogan on a wall. I know we all know that, but you really have to practice what you preach. And I have found that the culture at growth, likely most businesses, comes from when we experience friction or a problem or like a company fire drill, right? And how do we approach it? Is there finger pointing? Is there accountability? Is there ownership? Is someone's working off hours to make sure that the product can get shipped on time? Are we following up with the client? I mean, all these little things are the DNA that makes up who you truly are as a company. And I'm incredibly proud of what we've built at growth because of that DNA.
Yeah, I must say it's been really impressive to watch your journey over the last 3 years. It's, really, really impressive. Well done, Chris.
You've been a direct and indirect influence on our own growth. So everyone knows we meet monthly with a group of HubSpot owners or leadership to talk about the problems that we have and the changes that we see in the market. And you've been consistent and very transparent. It was a rare opportunity for me to look into a company like yours with feels like a crystal ball sometimes. I haven't said it anywhere, so I'll say it now. I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing those things. It's helped a lot.
Yeah, likewise. And I think, that group has been really valuable, I think, to all of us in the group. But I think that value, again, transfers both back to HubSpot, but also clearly the value transfers also to all our collective clients that we have, because what we're talking about there every month is how do we create better value for our clients. We all learn from each other how to do things better and to keep leaning into best practices as they evolve and as technology evolves, right? Really cool.
Yeah, it's fun to see the different approaches and team makeups, and a lot of the problems that we solve are similar. Lead gen, CRM implementation. I mean, really using sales software, all of these sorts of things. And there's many ways to tackle it. But I think we all agree that relying on the human function and clear communication and accountability are everyone's tool in everyone's tool belts for success.
Yeah, no, totally. I just wrote something recently. So we were all super excited when the announcement came out a couple of weeks ago of HubSpot's new slogan of easy, fast, and unified. But then as I kind of let that sink in a little bit, I had to sort of share my feelings on LinkedIn recently, where as I thought about it more, I continued to love the whole idea of the unified piece. But the more I was hearing and thinking about it, the easy and fast were getting they were like a little bit like double-edged swords, right?
Yes.
Where it reminded me of one of the most common mistakes we see made in business when it comes to technology, which we all know notoriously as the shiny object syndrome, right?
Yes, I'm very familiar.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, if I can get a shiny object to solve all my problems, that's just going to be awesome. And to me, that was the one thing that I had to get my thoughts out into the world about, because like I said in my LinkedIn post, it's easy and fast relative to the competition or the market that you're in, right? So in the case of HubSpot, the big competition are Salesforce and Dynamics, where a CRM implementation takes 2 to 3 years, whereas a HubSpot CRM implementation takes 3 to 6 months. So again, 6 months is a lot faster than 2 years. But that doesn't mean it doesn't require the things we talked about earlier. It still requires change management. It still requires training so that the users adopt the system. And the fact that HubSpot is so much easier to use than the other two is great. But again, it's not as easy as just plugging it in and then it does it for you, right?
Well, I mean, marketing messages aren't always 100% accurate, and they're designed to do a thing, which is to draw attention. And so that's the thing that's difficult sometimes, especially because we are all in such technical roles. Is remember, this is just a flare. So people will look at what HubSpot is talking about, even if it's
Absolutely.
But the easiness of Breeze is still being developed. What I do love about HubSpot as a CRM and just like the whole ecosystem of software is how it's built. And so to me, it seems easy and fast is incredibly accurate because of the infrastructure of HubSpot.
Sure.
And I know that's weird and like not defending their marketing message or anything, but when I get to play in a Dynamics or a Salesforce environment, I am like, who is the captain here? Like, what is going on? And everyone's like, no idea. Oh, these things just don't connect, or this lag here, or duplicate. Absolute nightmare. And we have it so good. Being HubSpot users, adopters, and implementers, we forget just how not easy and how not fast these other industry giants are. And I am very bullish on HubSpot's future as more and more companies recognize the value, not only in dollars and time, but also change management and all the other fun things that come with it.
Sure. I completely agree that there's no comparison in the software side of things that, HubSpot is just going to be, we know, you and I know, I mean, it's just so much easier and faster and better. And the pendulum has obviously swung back to, one unified system versus having 20 best-in-class things that are cobbled together, which require one or two $150,000 a year admins to do on a daily basis, which gets very expensive and very clunky.
It's also a lot of liability, putting all of the pressure on these individuals that you have inside your org who don't have the time to learn and adapt and evolve and probably don't have the authority to make change either. Nothing's wrong with the salary or the humans, but the concept of how these businesses build these enablement units is broken too. It's like they're using old technology to fight a war and just throwing mass everything that they have on it and opening up the old cellars and sheds. I mean, not to go off currently familiar topic, but it's a weird way to approach a scenario, in my opinion.
Sure. No, absolutely. And yeah, but I think what I want to do, and of course, having you as a colleague on the show who, we're doing the same thing, which is we help our common customers with HubSpot, that we call clients or customers. We're helping them make sure that they use HubSpot in the most effective way to achieve their business outcomes or their business goals, right? And Salesforce has a partner program. Microsoft Dynamics has a partner program. Every major software company that is trying to grow through complexity has a partner program. HubSpot arguably has the best solutions partner program anywhere that I've seen. And I think, to me, that's where the sort of the answer lies beyond. So easy, fast, and unified. Yes. However, you should still work with a partner to customize the software for your particular business, because your business is different to every other business. We talk about all the time, when you've seen one business, you've seen one business.
I mean, that's a very good line. And, just to speak briefly on software companies having partnerships or programs that are labeled partnerships, but maybe aren't necessarily a partnership. I think one of the fun things HubSpot has done, and is done in many ways, is be the guiding light for how to do something correctly from like a morally ethic standpoint and execution standpoint. So I think they've helped make software and the jobs or the roles around it, they've made it more equitable for people of color and women and just not the people that you see behind most of these sort of tools. I think that's wonderful. And then the partner program is truly, I know they've had some ups and downs, and I still feel like I'm a newbie only having been in it for 3 or 4 years, but I've been a partner of a lot of softwares for many, many years in companies. It's amazing the resources that they give and the empowerment that they give to HubSpot partners. Not to wave a, hey, everybody should be a HubSpot partner, but I can say that the compliments that you are giving me probably wouldn't be as relevant 7 or 8 years ago when I was running things without some of the infrastructure and guidance and mentorship that they provide me. So big fan of the HubSpot partnership program. They've changed my life.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's something that's really hard to explain to the leaders of a company that are assessing a new CRM, how the humanity and that cultural richness that HubSpot has, they're They're always winning the best place to work awards, whether it's regionally or nationally, or which again, you can only do if you're leading, with people first. And that, I think that comes through, I think, to your point in the product. They're always doing what's right by the customer, right? It then, of course, makes it very easy for us to be a good partner.
It's wonderful. I'm out here in Monterey, California, so I'm a bit of a hippie, and it's a good group of people. It attracts good people, and I have found that the customers that are most successful also have a bit of that intrinsic empathy bug, real human, reasonable expectations, communicate more clearly, not always super clearly, but all these lovely things that make up the best humans. It's great.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned like geographically, because like when we were all together in Boston a few weeks ago, it doesn't matter if people are from California or Minnesota or Michigan, or the list goes on and on and on. There's something that ties us all together, which I think is that commitment to solving for the customer, right? Which is, I think, is the single thread that ties us all to HubSpot and why we are all so excited about the work that we're doing. And of course, the product that they build.
It is interesting, right? Like to be in a room full of competitors, but also for it to feel like a bit like a homecoming.
Right.
Again, accidental byproduct of the curation of a proper partner program.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Talking of which, Chris, how do you hope the HubSpot Solutions partner, whether it's an individual partner, how they evolve best to support organizations in their growth in the coming year?
Well, the hardest thing is always going to be for people to actually do the thing, right? They can't control that portion. And I think they're doing a wonderful job controlling and managing the mechanisms they do have. So one is the financial piece. So it sounds like they've continued to invest and reinvest and find new ways to help companies that are investing in them. That's lovely. I don't want to get into specifics, but they're available. That's great. They continue to take like an active approach to finding what information we want and need and the best delivery tools. I think that's wonderful. And yeah, I don't really have coach insight for them. I'm kind of like reactive to it. Like what they do is what they do. I don't have control over that. Some people have very strong feelings about like a Lord of the Rings TV show. It's a show. I love it. It's great. That's how I feel about most of my relationships. Like I can't control what happens on the other side, but I definitely gravitate towards the good ones. So I think HubSpot's doing a great job. And
yeah. How do you think we'll evolve over the next year with some of the big announcements that were made at Inbound?
My understanding is that out of the 7,000 or 8,000 HubSpot partners, a lot of them are traditional marketing agencies, which I can empathize with. That's in my DNA as well. And I think with that, the needs of customers are changing. These tools are changing. And so my hope is that these companies take a proactive approach to how they're servicing, having real honest conversations. For us, we're finding a lot of value in. We obviously offer the retainment level of work, whether you need 10 hours of HubSpot senior level administration, or if you want to go on a 12-month ABM program. But offering up informative workshops around the fundamentals and these other could be very high ticket, low resource type products. I think more of that is needed. Productizing is important. I feel like I hear Brian Garvey, like his voice from 2022 in the background, like, I told you so. So I hope that us as partners and we lean into one another too and ask what's working and what's not.
Yeah. And how do you feel about the future HubSpot partners being AI transformation consultancies?
I think it's important to, as a business owner, to be aware of what's happening in the market. And the reality is that AI does have a tremendous impact on the way that we work. And still, we're very new. I mean, ABM's been around for 12 years and people are just starting to figure out how to tap into these superpowers. So I think there's going to be a long tailwind to adoption, kind of bridging what I said earlier. Like it's hard to get people to do things that are different. So I think what Brian was really saying is right now the market's basically zero, but it's going to grow. And there's a ton of competition of who's going to run Google ads for a company, right? That's a product that everyone has learned and done. And since I was like 19, I could run ads, right? But this has not many, if any, people in the market for AI enablement and things. So I think what he's addressing is there's a huge opportunity to create services that are adjacent to what you've been comfortable with. And there's going to be a market for it. I would say it's not a huge market today, but it's growing. So get in while the getting's good.
Yeah, but of course, make sure you're not too early. Like we've made that mistake a few times where, we go, oh, that's awesome. We're going to do that. And then it's like, hello. He's like,
no, that's a very good point for us. The approach I took was, okay, all this brief stuff sounds great. I'm no longer in service, so I don't know what the hell we're doing. let me tap a few of our customers that love working with me and then see if there's other customers out there, like HubSpot users, that are curious about Breeze. There's just like very long-winded one-sheets online about it. So we're going to do 4 workshops. I'm donating my time. We're going to have about 10 companies, all of different industries. Everyone's a senior leader. We're going to just kind of like talk through, okay, day 1, here's the basics. Who wants to do the HubSpot enrichment thing? Okay, let's have you check out right now, and then let's see what that looks like. And I'm excited for it because everybody that's signed up so far, the companies are huge. It's such a fun way. I say fun. I love this stuff. Fun way to see in real time what is working and what's not. I don't know. I think more of that's probably needed.
Yeah. No, you're right. Very cool. And by the way, to those listening or watching, if you're looking for an awesome ABM resource, Chris and his team at Growth Marketing Firm are your guys.
Thank you. Great shameless plug.
So we kind of just started talking about this, but I mean, if we can maybe dig a little further on this massive AI opportunity, which again, I know we're very, very, very early in even though AI has been like hard and fast for the last 2 years, we haven't even really started on the up curve of the bell curve yet, right? And I know you're going to be doing this cohort now that you just talked about to essentially learn together with some of your clients. But what are you suggesting to businesses, as daunting but exciting as this AI opportunity is? What do you suggest to folks who reach out to you for advice on how do we approach AI?
The first thing you should always do is research. So we've created some content pieces, kind of like Breeze 101 type stuff, AI 101 stuff, but start with digesting information. Again, I say often, I'm not the person to look to for the quick, easy answer. My road, my story isn't quick or easy.
Yeah.
And like Obama said, nothing worth it is. I'm paraphrasing. It's not his exact quote. So that's the first thing. And that's always kind of a shocker for people. Like, hey, everything I say, there's a warning sign. This won't be fast or easy. Ironic to the brand message. And then I would say what's probably most important is, without AI in your mind, what are some of the operational problems that you come into? And then we can start with that list and see if, right off the bat, if some of the ways that growth has leveraged AI, both for ourselves and customers, can help with some of those things. And then we'll pick one and then kind of like talk through, what does that process look like? What tools do you need? And we start there. And a lot of it, I think that's how we have found success as partners for our clients, is being able to slow things down, approach things logically, and not overpromise and underdeliver on what the outcome can be. And it's hard in the sales cycle because people are looking for fast and easy. And Alec on our sales team, he's a charmer. But we really urge him to remind people that we would rather you take more time in choosing the right solution for you than hopping onto a thing with weird expectations and it not being that way. So
yeah, that we have obviously the same challenge.
I can imagine the AI conversation that Brian Halligan is talking about, though, is probably similar to when cars came out. And everyone's like, oh man, everyone's going to have a car. But then like when your car broke, who fixed it?
Yeah.
Nobody knew how to fix cars yet. There were no mechanics.
Right.
Now there's mechanics in every neighborhood, right? So I think what Brian was describing is, if you're a service provider, be a mechanic. And soon everyone's going to have a car and the car's going to break and they're going to need someone to fix it. The narrative that when I was reading his message, that is the story that I just like drew in my head, was like, okay, what he's saying makes sense. You don't want to be the first mechanic way out of the way where there's no cars. You're like, hey, the cars are coming. Then you're like, shit, I'm 5 years too early. I'm out of business now. But be aware. Buy a wrench, read a book.
Yeah, right. I really like that analogy. Maybe I'll take it one step further. It's almost like when the first kit cars came out. So HubSpot is, in our case, in our world, is producing the kit car. But in many cases, the folks that wanted to drive that kit car didn't want to put it together themselves. And so, we're the ones that are putting together that kit car because we've built 100 of them before. So we'll make sure that it's built properly and it's going to last. And then, of course, we can maintain it for you as well after that.
That's a very good way to describe it. We could probably teach you how to drive it too. All the things.
Right.
Tires that came out, you want an upgrade. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. And beware that like the chassis of this car is super light. And if you step on the gas too fast, it's going to spin. So be aware,
I think that's good. I mean, what would be another way to describe this, like against other vehicles? I think your kit car is the best example. Like it's fast and light. It can do a lot of things. Start slow.
Yeah. It's easy and fast.
Nice job. You're good.
So I guess the way that you're approaching this question of like, if someone asked you for advice around AI is kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier, right? And this is the same way I think about it is ultimately AI is technology, the same way that a fax machine was technology and, you name all the different things. And as you and I talked about earlier, when you're trying to use technology, when you introduce technology is to make things go better and faster, to create efficiency and productivity in your business when it comes to business technology. But you have to make sure that you have everything laid out and figured out manually first. Because if you don't, well, so Emily on our team, she did a really awesome session at Inbound with Ellie Eisenreich from HubSpot called Garbage In, Garbage Out. It's all about clean data. And I had a guest on the podcast recently as well. He was saying, yeah, well, data and technology will always go together. And you cannot talk about data and technology anymore without talking about AI, because AI uses data. AI is technology. It's all kind of the same thing. The critical thing is you have to have good, clean, organized data. Otherwise, the AI is just going to make it worse. The same way as technology 20, 30 years ago would have just made what the garbage you were putting in even worse.
We know people don't like hearing that. They do love fast and easy. And those things are possible when you start with those foundations.
Which is why I think we have to start, you and I, by being vulnerable like we were earlier, saying we've both made the same mistake many, many times, and I'll probably make it again a few more times. I'm getting better.
Dang it, we're humans, man. Why can't we just figure out this perfection thing? Dang it.
Which is why I make sure I surround myself with people who stop me from making shiny object decisions,
Smart. We've got interesting but limited guardrails here, so I am my best throttle. Katrina does a good job too of reining me in, but right after Inbound, rather than resting that weekend, got Richard Walsh on our team on like a 6-hour session, and I just dove into Breeze to see like what would be the logical conclusion about at least this chapter, what is happening, so I could be ahead of the thing. And I'm glad that everyone's like, hey, we are like at capacity at growth. So if you're going to go figure this out, walk this trail yourself, basically. So I was like, all right, cool. I'll figure out this cohort thing. And it resonated. And that's okay. I'm enjoying the fact that I can see new things and experiment and not only have the ability to create new ideas, but I also have the ability to execute them and then thankfully to go to market with them too. So I'm like my own little micro department at growth with experimentation, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you're like an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur at the same time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's important, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And innovation is so critical in the space that we're in. Chris, so the theme of this show is why do some businesses or companies scale better than others? Apart from your personal experience as a HubSpot partner over the last few years, talk about all your experience thus far. What have you seen as being the constants that have helped the organizations that you've either worked in or worked with scale better than those who weren't scaling as effectively?
I was very lucky very early in my career, like 2001, 2003, like very beginnings of the 2000s, to be around Red Bull when it launched and then when it exploded. And those memories like pop up still pretty frequently, not unlike the product being in stores. I was with the field marketers and the distributors. And I learned a lot of things about that and seeing how Red Bull's evolved over the years. And the DNA that I saw there that I see in companies that grow, including growth and others, is a desire to work together, like an intensity that is similar to like a flame. And also the ability to make mistakes without it turning into like a toxic situation. And it does feel a lot like a high-performing rugby team. I think those are the chemical makeup of the companies that grow is definitely attitude and culture, and the people all have to want that desire. And then, of course, you do need a level of accountability. When you go fast, you do make mistakes. So that needs to be kind of accounted for in the process. But ultimately, and then at some point you'll grow big enough, and then you kind of have to like grow up, which happens to a lot of companies, which I think is what a big part of when Brian Halligan stepped down and then Yamini stepped in. That to me felt a lot like the 2007s of Red Bull changing as a company. And I've seen that in many companies going from like, hey, I'm $1 million to 10 million. Oh, at 10 million, we've all got to grow up a little bit, like tighten things up for growth. Going from $1 million to 2, hey, this Asana thing. Hey, sorry guys, we have to do this. These sorts of elements I think are intrinsic to high performing, high growth companies. But you got to shoot up fast. And Redwood's in their first 50 or 5 years, within the first few years of Redwood basically shoots up very thin and very tall, and it's fighting for sky, its most important resource it needs to grow. And so it's not always the cutest or the fastest or the most beautiful redwood tree, but it secures the resources it needs to then give it the ability to grow. And I think that carries over to growth for companies as well.
Yeah. So teamwork, which of course requires people, that is, I would agree, is foundational to any team having the ability to scale once they add whatever else. So say you now have this awesome team that really works well together. What is the next thing you think that differentiates, whether it's Red Bull or any other company that you've seen that helps them scale to the next level, where let's say there might be another awesome team somewhere else that has the same number of people, the same funding, access to the same technology. What is the next level of growth secret, I guess?
It's great. It's branding. You don't need to have the perfect message out. It doesn't even need to be a clear value prop, but getting your name and logo and brand out in front of people so people feel more comfortable with it is very important. We take that approach. It's probably very obvious. So I'd say that that's kind of inbound 101 is brand awareness. Companies need to pay for it. It's not easy to attribute brand awareness marketing to dollars, but over time, you can see the companies that grow made the investment. So I think and I'm a marketing and sales human at the end of the day, I think. So brand awareness is really important. And then you need to have a team that is doing the outbound outreach and letting people know you exist and the problem that people are having that you solve exist. Some people may not have named the problem that you solved. So, I'm big on spending marketing. There's always new fun tools, ways, and theories, building community or ABM. They're all essentially the same thing, which is letting people know who you are and how you approach things. And in 2024 and moving into 2025, the layer of a company to the people is the wall is thinning with social media and podcasts and all these things. People are able to look into your company now. And so you want to have people that they can see that are somebody that they would want to work with, whether you're selling big pumps or you're selling consultative CRM services, all similar playbooks, I think.
So let's just say, you have an awesome team that's really figured out their branding and their messaging. They've got a great sales process, but they're at, let's say, 50 people, but they're trying to get to a team of 500 people. What do they do to get from 50 to 500?
All right, if I'm giving you strategic advice, are we looking at this from like a high level where I would say you'd probably want to look into merger and acquisitions? You'd probably want to greatly expand your outbound?
No, I'm just thinking I'm just saying there's two companies that did incredibly well. They got to, let's say, 50 or 100 people because they had awesome team members, awesome teamwork, great culture. They were killing it on their marketing. They had a solid sales process to make sure that they were filling the pipeline. But then what can break at that point to prevent them from getting from 50 to 100 people to the next level of, let's say, 500 people? Why would one company get from 100 to 500 people and the other one not?
Risk of sounding like under-sophisticated. I truly feel that it is the people that makes the difference. So a lot of people, once you hit a certain level, don't mind letting their foot off the gas. That intensity can drop down. They hit their goal. They climb that mountain. Everest, check. But some people want to hit all 7 mountains. Those type and that leadership, if that's where your direction is, where one mountaintop isn't enough, that's the company that has the highest likelihood of going in that direction because it's part of intrinsically what they want to do. And they've been able to surround themselves with the people. And of course, there's marketing for more opportunities. There's good salespeople for closing, but that company DNA, that company culture. And that's why when we meet with our HubSpot executives, they ask, what are our goals? What do we want to build? And for a long time, my goal was to be a smaller company. And now that I've hit that mountaintop, I'm like, oh, those all look like they'd have incredible views too. Let's keep growing. I feel like I have the DNA and the resources and the ability to continue to lead a team, take a couple punches in the face here and there. And I think that's the magic is who's running the company, who's at the top, and what are they bringing into the team for direction and leadership.
Okay. So you're not going to take my softball of where technology or process might come into play to help a team grow.
Well, probably not on purpose. Those things are important and are byproducts. I don't know if maybe I just look at it a different way.
Well, yeah, I was thinking of, because in professional services businesses like our own, it's this continuous teeter-totter, right? Or where I come from, it's called a seesaw between sales and marketing and delivery, right? It's like you have to keep the balance. As you sell more work, you have to grow the team to deliver that work and service that work continuously. And earlier in the call, you mentioned Asana, which is a project management tool. The reason I'm guessing you introduced or brought in Asana is because you're trying to tighten up and automate your processes for your team to work more effectively, which brings one of the things that comes up most frequently, one of the things that comes up most frequently on the show, which is after people and culture and all that kind of stuff, it's process. How do you improve your processes over time? And then, of course, like in the example of Asana, you introduce technology. So once you've nailed the process, you then build technology to make the process that much more efficient, build an automation where you can, et cetera.
I 100% agree that processes are important. And this probably is kind of accidentally showing our different leadership styles. And for me, the team and culture, there's a place for those people who have the superpowers of project management and things like that. And they are, going back to the rugby analogy, if South Africa is playing New Zealand, they might field a different starting 15 than if they were playing England. And different types of tournaments. I think the way I've approached leadership is definitely as like a coach of a rugby team and trying to find the right people in place. So speaking again to Asana, we knew that was a weak area in our game. And so we've been working at it. But I wouldn't say that's why we're continuing to grow and why we're on pace to go towards being a 100-person company. The culture and the people behind it that created the mechanisms that bought in and did the work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always going to be people first. Yeah. No, you're spot on. And again, that has been consistent through everyone we've spoken to on the podcast is without people, you're not going anywhere. And of course, then it's about having the right people, right?
What is that? What do you think about AI agents around the people conversation? That's kind of like an interesting combination of this culture thing we're talking about and technology we're talking about. I approached from 1 to 10. Are you familiar with the whole agent conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I figured you would be. So why I think it's important is because it is people first, but it's going to be a very interesting new way of how people approach problem solving and getting work done and measure their own performance and output.
Yeah.
Because hopefully people are able to way outperform what they used to do. But also that's scary because then where you needed 2, maybe you need 1.
Yeah.
Maybe AI and the AI agents thing will be a counter culture mechanism.
Yeah. Well, we were actually talking about that recently because so our slogan, our tagline, if you go to our website, is aligning people and technology. And really the way I think about everything, and even this conversation we've had today, is it starts with people and then it ends with technology to make the people more effective, more efficient, more productive, and happier, which we can get into at a different time. And to the point where I was saying, so a lot of our clients run on EOS or some other operating system where you have an accountability chart, which is, for those of you who don't know, is the same thing as an org chart, where, again, leadership has to decide on an ongoing basis, quarterly, but at least semi-annually or annually, you got to figure out, do we have the right roles and responsibilities on the bus to get us where we're going? But the interesting thing as I was thinking through this is it's an accountability chart, which means it's designed for people, because I was starting to put in AI agents into like a fictitious accountability chart. Let's have AI agents. And I realized actually you wouldn't need to put them on there because they don't need to be kept accountable because they're machines. But you can still use the idea, which is you have an accountability chart. Everybody on there has roles and responsibilities. And then it goes into, well, how does an AI agent help each person with their roles and responsibilities to be more productive, effective, provide better customer experience, et cetera? So that's how I think about it.
I think that's a very smart way to approach it. And that is probably one of the AI things that is maybe as obvious as it is not obvious about what the ways that AI are going to be able to make things change. Richard Walsh at Growth is really, really talented when it comes to all things AI. And so he's been building functions that are now labeled as AI agents within our own organization. It's really incredible. Thankful for him.
Yeah, Rich is super smart. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost weird sometimes the way that he thinks. Like, God bless him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so critical to have someone like that. It'll be so valuable to everybody going forward, having an AI expert on your team.
Yes, agreed. That's what I think one of the superpowers of Dynamico and Growth is just that when we approach a problem, we are able to bring a different type of bench than a individual company would have on their roster. We've been able to curate some really amazing talent and some really great humans, and to be able to bring them into a problem to solve, pretty wonderful to see what they come up with.
Yeah, and absolutely. And then, of course, in addition to that, it's all the practice that our teams get to be really good at what they do. We were having this conversation actually this morning where we're not saying that, especially when it's easy and fast, that like pretty much anybody can figure out one aspect of the things that we do. The question is that the best use of their time? And that comes back to, again, the culture and mindset that you have. Do you have a team or people who are just trying to be better at what they do and focus on what they do that's the best use of their time and what they like to do every day, versus having them do things just because they can? Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But
yeah, we'll do that chapter later this year.
Right, exactly. So, Chris, thanks so much for joining me on the show today. I'm going to ask you one last question, which is any other advice, books, resources, or just some Chris Nault advice for anyone listening as we sort of are pretty much started into Q4 and getting ready for 2025?
I guess my message will probably be for leaders. And it's really important to understand not only your people's motivators, but not to understand them, but to actually care. And I'm just speaking more and more to people in our space about how they can grow and change. And so much time is being spent on the technology and AI and so little of the conversation about the people that are doing the work. So care about them, listen, make space for that, and, grow better together, all that fun stuff. And thank you for having me on again. You've had a tremendously positive impact on me as a person, and indirectly, some maybe a little directly to growth as an organization as well. And I'm incredibly appreciative of you shining that light on us.
Absolutely, Chris. Likewise. No, I value our friendship. And thanks again for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
Did you enjoy this episode?
Find more at RevOpsChampions.com.